Hello, welcome to Armchair Sports Talk. I'm real excited because today football is back, NFL regular season football. So we're going to kick it off with the 10-minute topic. Today's 10-minute topic, we're going to preview the first game of the NFL season. We're going to go over some week one bets, and we're going to dive into some week one daily fantasy strategy and picks. Daily fantasy strategy called DFS for short. So first, we're going to start with the Antonio Brown drama. I didn't plan on talking about Antonio Brown today, but Antonio Brown had different plans. He decided to be extremely controversial. So I'm going to just give you the facts first. Looks like he's going to be suspended by the Oakland Raiders, soon to be Las Vegas Raiders, and he's kind of been asking for it for a long time. So I guess he's getting what he wants. The only downside to that is he could be in violation of the clauses in his contract that would guarantee him the $30 million. So I think at this point, the Raiders are experiencing a little bit of buyer's remorse, rightfully so. On a more serious note, there seems to be some connection between Antonio Brown's behavior and possibly a hit he has sustained from Montez Burfict or just years of a lot of hits to the helmet. The behavior is a little erratic, and it's become more erratic over time. So it wouldn't surprise me if later on we realize there is a bigger issue here at hand versus just a diva wide receiver, for lack of a better phrase. So all the best to Antonio Brown. Hopefully he turns it around. In my prediction for the AFC West, I did acknowledge that as far as fantasy play was concerned, that Antonio Brown concerned me. So fortunately, he's on neither of my two fantasy season-long teams, and he's not really in contention for the big Week 1 daily fantasy contest on Yahoo, FanDuel, and DraftKings, which we'll cover here in a little bit. But let's go over to tonight's game. Tonight's game is between the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. It's the 100th NFL season. This is a classic battle between two NFC North powerhouses. They are both in consideration for making an NFC Championship game. I'm just trying to figure out where I'd rank them, if they're Super Bowl favorites or what. But they're both favored to make it to the NFC Championship game. The Green Bay Packers return a healthy Aaron Rodgers, we believe. It's my understanding he was hobbled all throughout the season last year, and that's thanks to a Khalil Mack. I believe it was a sack or a hit on the quarterback, a legal hit. And I don't think that Green Bay wants that to happen again. So Aaron Rodgers returned in that game, led a miraculous comeback of sorts, and beat the Chicago Bears. This time around, with almost the same team on both sides, same coach for the Bears, a different coach for the Packers, which I think works in their favor. I know they're going to Chicago, but I like the Packers to win this game. I think that Davante Adams is going to give the receiving corps an edge for Green Bay. I know that Chicago has more receivers, but I think Green Bay has the better receiver. I think Green Bay has the better quarterback. Now, we know the Bears have the better defense, but their defense is set to return to reality a little bit. They had an amazing season last year. So just like the Jaguars, which I've referenced before, you can't be perfect forever. Eventually, you're going to hit a few stumbling blocks. The football is not a perfect circle. It will take some odd bounces here and there. So it looked like the ball bounced the Bears' way a lot last season. So now we're going to get a little bit of regression back to the mean. What that means is you're not going to have an elite defense anymore. You're going to have a very good defense, but now that defense is going up against a more healthy Green Bay Packers team. So we're interested to see what happens beyond Davante Adams at the wide receiver core. You have Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdez-Scantling in consideration there. So we don't know who's going to be Aaron Rodgers' second most targeted wide receiver. But there's also consideration for Jimmy Graham. Talk about a fall off from being an elite tight end to just a veteran presence. So he still brings a little to the table. He's still a big receiving tight end who can run routes well, and as we know right now, he's healthy. So that leans me towards the Packers. So the thing that pushes me over the edge, it's a 3-point predicted game where the Bears win. They're getting those 3 points because they're at home. If you remember, the Bears have a history of having problems with field goal kicking, even as recently as last year's playoffs. So if it's going to come down to a last-second field goal kick, I'll go ahead and get the better payout odds and take the Packers, which in my understanding is the better team as I break down. So my feelings have me on the Packers, so that way I can get 1.5 times my money. They call it plus 150. That means you wager $100 and you win $150. So anytime you're able to get a positive payout on a bet you tend to like, that's always a good reason to go there. So that's the first of a 5-team parlay I'll be talking about. Feel free to bet that individually or put it part of the parlay. And then if I'm right, give me credit. And if I'm wrong, don't be afraid to throw it back in my face. We'll move on going over the rest of the week 1 bets. The next one I like is the Washington Redskins. They are underdogs at the Philadelphia Eagles, as they should be, but they're big favorites. They're big underdogs. They're underdogs to the tune of 10 points. So what I did, I went ahead and they call it teasing the line. So I teased the line to make it 10.5 points. I'd hate for the Redskins to lose by 10, and then I just get my money back. I don't like ties. I like winning or losing, being right or wrong. No participation trophies. So the Redskins at plus 10.5 is what I like. And the reason I like them is they have a veteran quarterback in Case Keenum. Paul Richardson is actually a underrated wide receiver as their number 1 option. Trey Quinn, assuming he's healthy enough to play and play up to his flashes of potential there. I think the Redskins are underrated. Darius Geis is healthy. Adrian Peterson's a veteran presence. Chris Thompson coming out of the backfield. Jordan Reed is air quotes healthy. He is in concussion protocol last I saw, but expected to be cleared to play for week 1. So I think this Washington team is being undervalued because for whatever reason, they're the Washington Redskins. And also the Eagles are getting a lot of credit early, as they somewhat should, but we don't know who's good and we don't know who's bad. This is a divisional game between 2 teams that have aspirations. Maybe the Washington Redskins are misplaced in their belief, but they believe it nonetheless. So 10.5 points is a good amount of points to have to start off an NFL game between division opponents. And let me give a little credit to Philly. Carson Wentz is back and healthy. They have Zach Ertz. Dallas Goedert's another year experience in the league. They brought in Jordan Howard. We're getting rave reviews from Miles Sanders. Deshaun Jackson's going to help stretch the field. Nelson Aguilar can work underneath routes. Alshon Jeffrey's a great wide receiver in a tough matchup against Josh Norman, who's a good cornerback. And then the Eagles secondary is a little suspect. So with that in mind, this should be a much closer game. So I think we're in good shape here to take the Washington Redskins plus 10.5. A pretty easy pick, in my opinion, is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. They're favored to win. And I don't like messing around with the points in this situation because they were taking another road team. Looking at a lot of road teams today, just a heads up on that. The Ravens have aspirations. The Dolphins traded away one of their better linemen, probably their best lineman. They got rid of one of their better wide receivers, a veteran wide receiver, and they're accumulating draft picks. They have a rookie coach. They brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's like a sign that you're rebuilding at this point. So with all those indications, we're just going to go ahead and just add to our parlay, bumping the payout a little bit here, and take the Ravens. They call it the money line because we're just choosing them to win. They don't have to win by any amount of points. So with that, you get a little less payout. You'd have to bet $300 to win $100. So we're just going to add them to our parlay because I'm pretty confident in them. And we'll be doing an eliminator pool for Armchair Sports. So we'll post that up a little later. And they're my eliminator pick. So we'll go along with everybody else there. So next we're going to go into the afternoon games. The Detroit Lions travel to the Arizona Cardinals, and they're favored by 2.5 points. I think they win by a field goal or more than that. Arizona has a rookie coach. Detroit had a rookie coach last year. I think that you learn a lot in your first season as an NFL coach. There's a lot to manage. It's very easy to be overwhelmed, and I think the Lions are a little bit more talented than the Arizona Cardinals at this point in time. The potential's there for the Cardinals, but we haven't seen anything. So in this particular case, I think we have an offense that has a lot of aspirations. They want to play fast. When you play fast and you're inexperienced, you're prone to making more mistakes. The Lions have a defensive-minded coach from the Patriots, so I think they're going to be prepared for this game. And to win by a field goal on the road at Arizona doesn't seem like a tall order, so we'll add them to the parlay. I broke this 10-minute segment by talking about the Oakland Raiders and Antonio Brown. So let's go pick on them by choosing the Denver Broncos to win by a field goal or more. They're favored by 2.5. So if they win by a field goal, they'll get you your money. And they're at Oakland as well. I think that if you can get on this at this time, this would be a great thing to do. The Denver Broncos have a great defense. The Oakland Raiders invested money into a diva wide receiver, for lack of a better phrase. And unfortunately, he is giving them fits right now. So with no Antonio Brown, they returned back a lot of the players that they tried to win with, well, actually, no, they don't, because they lost Jared Cook. They lost Michael Crabtree. No, they lost. They just don't have. They already traded away Amari Cooper. This team is not in good shape right now. They put a lot of their hopes in Antonio Brown having a connection with Derek Carr. So when you take him away, the rest of the team's going to lose confidence, in my opinion. I think the Broncos are going to win this divisional battle early because the Broncos are playing to make the playoffs, and the Raiders are just trying to figure things out right now. So we have a 5-team parlay: the Packers to win, the Redskins to win or lose by 10 or less, the Ravens to win, the Lions to win by a field goal or more, and the Broncos to win by a field goal or more. If you were to do this 5-team parlay, this would pay you 20-1. So if you're able to do a $1 bet, you'd win $20. I think most places charge a minimum of $5. So a $5 bet win you $100. I think that's a pretty good return for week one. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get into the daily fantasy side of things. And the first thing we're going to talk about is what I use for my model. I play on FanDuel, DraftKings, and Yahoo, like I said, and we're going to look at pricing disparity. Pricing disparity means the price that a player costs against your salary cap as a percentage of the total budget. So just to give you a short version of it, that's what I use. Make an Excel spreadsheet of players I like, and then we have them for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. So, for example, on DraftKings, I am a big fan of the Lions defense. We'll get into defenses, specifically how I target them a little later, but they're priced very low in comparison to the other sites that I mentioned. And I also love Dalvin Cook. I try to get a little exposure to Evan Ingram, and I like Tyler Lockett, D.D. Westbrook. But if I'm going to say my top two are going to be Dalvin Cook, I am going to try to put Dalvin Cook in every lineup that I can on DraftKings. We'll go over to FanDuel next. I really like Mike Evans and George Kittle. Tight end's a tough position. I think we're going to get ourselves a nice shootout in Tampa, and it's a late game. So you have Mike Evans on the Bucs, and you have George Kittle on the Niners. So hopefully they're going back and forth scoring against each other. As far as the defense there, I know I talked bad about Miami just a moment ago, but again, pricing disparity. The Miami Dolphins are the bare minimum price for a defense. It gives you a lot of flexibility with the rest of your roster on FanDuel. And then last but not least, Yahoo. They have one more game, so they call it a slate, the amount of games that you're choosing their players from. They have one more game on their slate than the other two sites, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Patriots. So I try my best to make sure I have some exposure to Juju Smith-Schuster, Vance McDonald, Sony Michel, Julian Edelman, even a little bit of Josh Gordon. But I know that they're not part of the other sites. So just keep that in mind. I try to factor that in. So for the main slate guys, I love Nick Chubb on Yahoo, Leonard Fournette. These guys are very underpriced. And then my favorite wide receiver play is going to be Kenny Golladay. So those are some names of some players you can commit to memory. And if you're going to play them on the sites that make the most sense. I didn't get into too much about the players because I do a strategy called stacking. I'm biggest on stacking on DraftKings, where it's a full point per reception, and then I do a little bit of stacking in FanDuel and Yahoo. So stacking is when you combine your pass throwing option, which is your quarterback, with a pass catching option, which would be running back, wide receiver, or tight end. When you do that, you want to think further ahead. You want to think, what's the game script going to be in this game? Who's the underdog? Who should be playing with the lead? Who should be playing from behind? Because if you know that and you're able to correctly predict those things, you can then create a lineup that gives you good correlation. So if we have a highly correlated lineup and we predict the game well, we could have a very profitable, enjoyable weekend betting on teams, figuring out what's going to happen, how they're going to win. So not only if you guess correctly, because that's what it is, it's still a guess, it's an educated guess. If you guess correctly, you figure out how they do it, you can find yourself taking down a daily fantasy tournament. You can find yourself hitting a big parlay. And what's more exciting than winning money and watching football, eating food and wings, drinking a beer or two? Not much more than that. So I said I'd get into defenses. I will do that right now very briefly. So I like to target defenses that are good at creating havoc. Havoc can be a sack, it can be a fumble, it can be an interception. If you have a tendency to get touchdowns on defense, that's something to keep in mind. A good kick returner or a punt returner can come into play as well. I tend to use pricing as a big component, but I do like to factor those other things in as well, and then I target the best price option there. So this might have been a little long on a 10-minute topic, but we're talking about things that I really enjoy. If there's time, I'll get a little bit more in depth or any breaking news, but that's pretty much it. And so in summary, I like to just say in daily fantasy, good luck to everybody out there. Hit us up on Armchair Sports Talk. We'll be monitoring the social medias a little more carefully as the season goes on. If you have any questions, comments, please let us know. Thank you guys. Until next time.